everyone, I'm Cheryl and welcome to the Sewing Room channel, and this is your tip of the week. This is a blouse pattern that has a dart. So here on the pattern is your dart. Now it looks scary, but believe me, once you know how, these are quick and simple to do. You'll notice that your fabric is cut a little differently around the dart. And that has a specific reason, which as we go along, you'll see why it is designed this way. After you've cut your fabric, don't remove the pattern until you have done the markings on your fabric where the notches, and you'll see other little circles that mean specific steps. And as you're going through putting this blouse together, in your instruction sheet, it'll explain what these symbols are for. But you want to make sure that you put a mark here, and then over here. Also, you want to look over the rest of the pattern, and you'll see these little triangles along the edge of the pattern. You want to make sure you mark those. Now, some people cut into the fabric and cut the little notch out. I don't do that, and in a moment I'll show you what I do. Up here at the shoulder seam is another notch. Now on some of your sections you might find two notches together. These notches are meant for matching your pieces of the blouse together. It's really helpful when you're going to mark your fabric if you have either a water-soluble fabric marker or a heat-sensitive fabric marker. So the heat-sensitive one works where after you've marked your fabric, you want to get rid of the marking, you just take your iron, a hot iron over it. For the water-soluble, all I do is just spray just a little dab of water and that marking will go away. So for the notches, I just put a great big dot. I know that that's going to help me match my seams. And then whenever I see circles, I will just put a straight line close to the edge. It was not going to be seen when the top is done. And then there's another notch here. I made a dot. And then over here on my dart, I did the same thing. Here's a dot there and there. There's one area you need to mark, and that's this dot here. So all I do is fold the fabric back until I see the dot, making sure my pattern piece is flat, and then I put another mark there. So that it's easy to stitch the dart, I will take a ruler and place it up here, matching the two dots, and draw a line with my fabric marker. Do the same thing on the other side, match the dots, and draw a line. Now you're going to fold the fabric over where the dart is. So you're going to bring front sides together. This is the armhole, this is the side area. So you're going to fold it over and you're going to match the dots down here and up here and place pins to hold it in place and making sure that your dots match up. And then do a straight stitch right on top of your drawn line and make sure you backstitch at each end. Pressing is a very important step on almost all of your sewing projects, no matter what you're making. Your dart needs to be pressed in a specific direction. You don't want to press it going up because this is going to stick out. You want to press it down, and when you press it down, it matches right along this edge. In a previous tip of the week, I showed you how to add a ruffle to many of your different blouse patterns, even if the pattern didn't call for a ruffle. But now in this tutorial, I'm going to show you two different methods for inserting a sleeve into a blouse or a jacket. Doesn't matter what you're making. And one way I used to do almost all of my adult life until one day I saw someone do it very different and it was so much easier. So I'm first going to show you the method the way I learned it. And you often still see that method in your instruction sheets on patterns that you buy. It's very important that you mark your fabric for the other notches that are on your pattern pieces, because there is a left sleeve and a right sleeve. And if you stitch them on the wrong side of your blouse or jacket, it's not going to fit right. So make sure that you do your notches for matching your seams. And I have one here and there's two here. So on your pattern pieces for the bodice is the front and back sections, you're going to see the double knot on the back section. So that's to make sure that you match the correct piece together. You've also got circles up here. This top one is to match your center seam at the shoulder, and these two here, these lines, are for where you're going to do gathering stitches. So before you insert the sleeve in, you want to do some large basting stitches. And you're going to do 2 rows. Do your first row about 1/8 of an inch from this raw edge, and then do a second row right there at the raw edge. And these are going to be used to what we call ease this fabric into the sleeve. We don't want it to be an obvious gather. It's just a slight puckering of the fabric so that you can ease it in to go up around the cap here of your shoulder. It might be helpful to some of you if you use a different color of thread on the bottom than on the top, because when you go to gather, you want to make sure you're pulling on the 2 top threads, which are my green ones. So you want to make sure you pull the bottom threads out of the way, and then you just pull against them, gradually gathering it up. And so as you can see, it's already curved in, enough. You don't need too much of a gather for it to fit over your shoulder. Before you put the sleeve in, you need to match your shoulder seam. So bring those little dots together, or notches if you cut them out, and place a few pins across the shoulder. Now your pattern instruction sheet will tell you what the seam allowance is, but for most clothing it'll be 5/8 of an inch right across here. I'm going to be using a serger to do almost all of the seams in a blouse. And this is what a serged seam looks like. Now a serger cuts the raw edges down and then binds the edges as it also stitches across here. So it's one step. If you do not have a serger, then of course do a 5/8 inch wide seam if that's what your pattern tells you to do, and stitch a straight stitch across here. Then to bind your edges, especially if you're using fabric that unravels. You don't need to worry about this if your fabric doesn't unravel. And then you can do a zigzag stitch across here. Most of your computerized sewing machines have at least 1 or more overcast stitches, so you can select one of those. And this is what my shoulder seam looks like right here. Now take your sleeve and you're going to bring the sides together and match your notches or your dots and place pins all along the edge here. And then stitch, it's probably 5/8 of an inch, go ahead and stitch and bind your edges on your sleeve. Take your back section and your front section, bring them right sides together, and then stitch your side seam. Again, read your pattern instructions for the correct seam allowance. Turn your sleeve front side out. You're going to insert the sleeve into the armhole and match this dot to your shoulder seam. So when you're inserting your sleeve, you want to match the little dots here. This is used for matching your seam. You want to put those in. And then you remember the little lines, that was for where the gathering stitches started. You want to match those up. Put a pin at the shoulder seam here, and there's the dot to match the shoulder seam. What you want to make sure is that the sleeve fabric that's been slightly gathered should lay fairly flat. It'll have a slight puckering to it. So you'll probably have to use a lot of pins to hold this down. So place a lot of pins. At the in the armpit area, what I did was I pushed the seam on the bottom in the opposite direction than the seam on top. Once you have everything pinned in place, then go ahead and stitch the recommended seam allowance. I stitched this sleeve in using my serger, and it was really difficult. So if you're going to do this particular method, it's probably going to be easier using a straight stitch on a sewing machine, because I got just a little bit of puckering right there. Now I'm going to show you a super easy method. This next method is my favorite. I would never go back to that other way. So in this method, you don't stitch any side seams together. You go ahead and bring your sleeve up into the armhole area, match all of the markings, then stitch it along that edge. Then you open everything up, bring front sides together on your bodice side seam and your sleeve side seam, and then stitch it all down at one time. Well, I hope this takes some of the mystery or fear or confusion that you have had in putting in a set-in sleeve. If you're interested in other tips of the week, I have a lot of them. So there'll be a playlist listed below your YouTube screen. You click on that playlist and a whole bunch of different videos will come up. Now, to get down to that playlist link, you need to scroll down to the description section, click on Show More or the down arrow, and it will expand open. I'll also have other beginner sewing projects listed down there. Now, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and check out my Facebook page. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing. If you like the Sewing Room channel, one of the best ways to show your support is to subscribe by clicking on that red subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to click on share to share this video with your friends. And make sure you click on the bell so you receive notifications for all my new videos. I'm Cheryl, this is Manny, and this is Scotty. See you next time.